picture this. It is 2 in the morning.
The absolute worst time for anxiety.
Right. The worst. A parent is lying awake, just staring at the ceiling, completely exhausted.
Yeah.
Because they know their child is struggling. I mean, they see the anxiety, they see the behavioral changes. They know with absolute certainty that their kid needs professional help.
But there's a catch.
There is a massive catch. The thought keeping them awake isn't just, how do I help my kid? It's a completely different, much heavier question.
Can we actually afford therapy?
Exactly. Can we afford this? It is just a daunting, terrifying wall to hit.
It really is.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at this incredible stack of sources today, detailing a program called MentalSpace School.
Yes.
And for context for you listening, it's a K-12 mental health support system operating right now in Georgia schools.
That's right.
And our mission today is to explore how this program is essentially dismantling that terrifying 2 in the morning wall because they're shifting the entire financial and logistical delivery model of student therapy.
Completely redesigning it?
Yeah, to completely remove the barriers to getting kids help.
It is such a critical mission, really, because getting access to mental health care, especially for a minor, it's rarely just about finding a therapist who happens to have an open slot on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right. That's just step one.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
It is really about surviving this gauntlet of systemic hurdles.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you look at the traditional landscape, you have network coverage complexities.
Oh, the worst.
You have deductible tracking, you have transportation logistics, and just the sheer administrative burden placed on a family.
A family that is already heavily stressed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a system that, quite frankly, inadvertently filters out the exact people who need the help the most.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the landscape MentalSpace School is attempting to re-engineer from the ground up.
Okay, let's unpack this because we have to start with that 2 in the morning question.
The money.
The money. We are looking at the immediate barrier for families, and what the source material shows about how MentalSpace addresses the financial aspect is honestly, it's a massive relief.
It really is.
For Georgia families who are on Medicaid, the cost for this therapy is literally $0. Zero. There are no copays, and critically, there are no surprise bills showing up in the mail 3 months later.
And the psychological safety of knowing a service is truly covered, that cannot be overstated.
Oh, totally.
Think about the mindset of a parent in that situation. When a family is already in a state of deep vulnerability regarding their child's mental well-being, the last thing they need is financial ambiguity. If they're constantly worrying that every 45-minute session is quietly draining a bank account they can't afford to drain, well, that stress bleeds directly into the household dynamic.
Which totally defeats the purpose of the therapy in the first place.
Exactly. It creates an environment of anxiety.
Right. But it's not just Medicaid, because for families with commercial insurance, MentalSpace accepts a massive range of major plans.
They really do.
According to our briefing document, we're talking Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, Peach State, Caresource, Amerigroup.
That covers a huge portion of the population.
Yeah, it's extensive.
Yeah.
And here is the crucial operational detail that stood out to me. The insurance is verified before the very first session even happens.
Yes.
They take away the financial ambush entirely.
And taking away that ambush is vital.
Yeah.
But we also have to look beyond just the clinical billing.
What do you mean?
Well, because even if the insurance covers the session itself, traditional therapy still carries an enormous amount of hidden costs.
Oh, right.
The clinical hour is just one fraction of the actual cost of receiving care.
Yeah, I always compare traditional therapy to winning tickets to a quote-unquote free event.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Right. You're so excited because the tickets were free, but then you get to the venue and you have to pay $50 for parking.
Right.
And then a bottle of water inside is $10.
Natural.
And because the event is at 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, you had to take an unpaid day off work just to attend.
Yep.
So suddenly your free event just costs you $150 and a ton of logistical stress.
Exactly.
That is what traditional in-person therapy is like for a lot of working families. You have to factor in the gas money, the physical transportation across town.
Taking time off work for an hourly worker.
Yes.
Yeah.
And finding childcare for the patient's siblings. But MentalSpace operates via teletherapy right there in the school building.
Right.
Which completely removes the parking and water costs from the equation.
What's fascinating here is how this structure creates what the briefing document calls equity by design.
Equity by design.
Yeah, by utilizing teletherapy within the school environment during the school day, you aren't just modernizing the delivery method.
Yeah.
You are actively neutralizing socioeconomic disparities.
Oh, yeah.
You are taking away the requirement that a parent must have a flexible, salaried job and reliable transportation just to ensure their child gets mental health support.
Right, because the kid is already at school.
Exactly. The core philosophy driving this is simple but profound. Cost and the logistical friction associated with that cost should never be the reason a child waits for help.
I love that. So we've established how incredibly accessible this is for the families.
Very accessible.
But as anyone who looks at systemic solutions knows, every time you solve a problem for one group, you have to wonder who is picking up the tab.
Right. Follow the money.
Follow the money. Which brings us to the school districts themselves. Because if I am a school district leader in Georgia evaluating mental health partnerships, my next natural question is going to be,
how do we pay for it?
Yeah. How on earth is this financially sustainable for my schools? I mean, budgets are already stretched incredibly thin.
They are. And that is where the financial mechanics of this model diverge significantly from the industry standard.
Okay.
In a traditional mental health partnership with a school district, the vendor usually front-loads the costs onto the district on a possession basis.
Wait, so the district acts as the primary payer for the clinical time?
Essentially, yes.
So the district is just paying a massive bill for therapy by the hour?
Correct. And that burns through a district's budget incredibly fast.
Oh, I bet.
But the MentalSpace school model intentionally flips that. In their model, the school district doesn't pay for the individual therapy sessions.
Okay, then what are they paying for?
The district pays for the infrastructure.
Ah.
They fund the presence of a dedicated therapist team for the school, the integration into the school's administrative systems, and the compliance support.
Okay, so they buy the framework.
Right. And the actual clinical work, the therapy sessions themselves, that is billed primarily through the student's existing insurance.
Okay, right.
And, as we just discussed, for a vast number of these students, that means billing Medicaid, resulting in $0 out of pocket for the family.
Wait, hold on a second. I need to push back on this.
Sure.
Because if the district is providing the framework and the billing is still going through the student's insurance, isn't this just shifting the bureaucratic nightmare of insurance claims from the parents to the school district?
Not exactly.
Or like keeping it on the provider while the district pays for the privilege of hosting them? Why is paying for infrastructure a good deal for a school?
It's a completely fair question, but it's actually about maximizing the efficiency of the capital involved.
Okay.
Think of it like a public utility. The school district is paying to lay down the pipes, the infrastructure.
Right.
That is a fixed, predictable cost that they can budget for annually because they are not paying for the water flowing through the pipes, meaning the individual therapy sessions. Their budget isn't being drained every time a new student needs help. The insurance companies, Medicaid and commercial, are already designed to pay for the water.
Ah, I see.
They have massive pools of capital specifically allocated for clinical care. The district is simply creating the secure, dedicated pipeline for that care to reach the students seamlessly during the school day.
That makes a lot of sense.
This model stretches the district's dollar exponentially further.
Wow, yeah.
By only funding the infrastructure, a district can serve significantly more students per dollar spent rather than capping out their budget after a few hundred sessions.
Okay, I like the public utility analogy, I really do. But let me press you on this.
Go for it.
What happens if a kid doesn't have insurance to pay for the water?
Right.
Like if they aren't on Medicaid and they don't have commercial insurance, does the tap just run dry for them? Is the district suddenly stuck with the kid who can't use the pipes?
That is the beauty of having the infrastructure paid for.
How so?
Because the district has funded that foundational pipeline, MentalSpace has a dedicated team already embedded in the school's ecosystem.
Okay.
They are providing crisis intervention, suicide prevention, and baseline support that isn't reliant on a possession billing code.
So they still get held?
Absolutely. Furthermore, in Georgia, programs like Medicaid and Peach Care act as a massive safety net for uninsured or underinsured minors.
Right, right.
Part of the infrastructure support is helping navigate families toward those resources. The infrastructure ensures No one is left standing outside the building, so to speak.
Ah, I see. You're letting the insurance companies do what they are supposed to do, which is pay for healthcare.
Exactly.
And you are creating a safety net with the infrastructure. You're just removing the friction of the delivery.
That's the perfect way to put it.
So the financial pipes are laid and the insurance water is flowing. But what exactly is coming out of the tap?
Good question.
Let's look at the actual care, because we need to look at what exactly the district and the students are getting for that investment. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Because it's much more than just a video call with a counselor once a week.
Way more. I mean, the scope of services outlined in the sources goes far beyond baseline therapy.
It does.
We are talking about same-day teletherapy access.
Which is huge.
Yeah, if a student is in distress on a Tuesday morning, they aren't being told to wait until a spot opens up next month. They are getting help that day.
Right.
They provide acute crisis intervention along with suicide and violence prevention programs. And the therapists providing this care are licensed, they are diverse, and the program heavily emphasizes cultural competence.
Which is a vital clinical metric.
Yeah, the briefing document points out that cultural competence in therapy isn't just a preferred feature or, like, a nice bonus.
No, not at all.
It is a clinical necessity.
It goes straight to what we call the therapeutic alliance.
The therapeutic alliance. Let's break that down because it sounds a bit clinical. What does that actually mean in practice for a kid logging onto a teletherapy session?
Right. So the therapeutic alliance is basically the baseline level of trust and mutual understanding required for therapy to even start working.
Okay.
Without it, you are just two strangers talking past each other.
Making zero progress.
Exactly. Now, apply cultural competence to that. Imagine a high school student trying to explain the specific pressures of being the eldest sibling in a first-generation immigrant household to a therapist who has absolutely no context for those cultural dynamics.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. The student has to spend half the session just translating their lived experience, exhausting themselves before they even get to the trauma or the anxiety.
Right.
But when a student speaks with a culturally competent therapist who inherently understands that background, their community context, and their lived experience.
The translation phase is skipped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The therapeutic alliance is formed much faster and much stronger. The outcomes are simply better when the patient feels intrinsically understood from minute one.
That makes so much sense. It's the difference between having to explain your world and just being able to live in it with someone who gets it.
Beautifully said.
And speaking of living in it, the program doesn't stop at the student. This is the part of the source material that really caught my eye.
The broader support.
Yes. MentalSpace School also includes staff wellness and family counseling. They are actively recognizing that a student's mental health doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Yes. This is the shift from a reactive system to a proactive, holistic environment.
Because honestly, treating a kid for 45 minutes a week and then sending them right back to a deeply burned out teacher, or returning them to a highly dysfunctional environment at home, it's like buying a brand new top-of-the-line air purifier, but leaving all your windows wide open during a smog warning.
Wow.
The environment just overrides the treatment entirely.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
You cannot out-treat a toxic environment.
No.
How they implement this holistic care is what makes the infrastructure investment so powerful. They aren't just giving the teachers a pamphlet on stress.
Right. Here's a brochure. Good luck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are providing actual staff wellness support, giving the educators who spend 7 hours a day with these students their own outlet and tools for regulation.
That is so needed.
And by offering family counseling, they are bringing the parents or guardians into the therapeutic process, giving them the tools to support the child when the school day ends.
That is amazing.
True mental health support requires stabilizing the entire ecosystem around the child. By supporting the educators and the family, the infrastructure investment pays dividends across the entire community.
And speaking of infrastructure, we have to talk about the less glamorous but incredibly necessary side of this.
Compliance.
Compliance. When you are dealing with minors, schools, and medical records, the red tape is usually thick enough to stop a truck. Our sources show MentalSpace is fully HIPAA and FERPA compliant. And we should probably distinguish those two, because usually bridging those two massive legal frameworks is a total nightmare for a school district.
It absolutely is a nightmare. So HIPAA is the federal law protecting sensitive patient health information.
That's the medical side.
Right. FERPA is the federal law protecting the privacy of student education records.
And that's the school side.
Exactly. A school counselor operates under FERPA. A clinical therapist operates under IPA.
Yeah.
When you bring a clinical therapist into a school environment, those two giant regulatory bodies collide.
Sounds messy.
Very. Most school districts simply do not have the legal or administrative bandwidth to build a secure bridge between their educational records and a third-party medical provider's health records.
That makes sense.
The fact that MentalSpace handles this dual compliance as part of their infrastructure offering is a massive operational relief for the district.
Which brings us to another massive piece of compliance mentioned in the stack. The source material notes that they provide HB 268 compliance support ahead of a July 2026 deadline.
Yeah, and this raises an important question about how school districts navigate the legislative landscape.
What exactly is HB 268?
Well, HB 268 in Georgia involves significant, newly mandated requirements regarding how student data, particularly sensitive health, safety, and disciplinary data, is handled, tracked, and reported by the state schools.
So it's not just about keeping the data private anymore. It's about a highly specific way the state wants schools to actively manage and report on student well-being.
Exactly. And the burden of setting up those new tracking and reporting systems falls squarely on the shoulders of local school administrators who are already overwhelmed.
Seriously.
The fact that this partnership explicitly supports getting districts ready for that looming July 2026 regulatory deadline shows that they are not just providing a temporary clinical service. They are building a proactive, future-proof system. They are taking a massive, highly technical administrative burden off the shoulders of the school staff so the school can focus on education.
Okay, so we have a brilliantly structured financial model that flips the script on who pays for what.
Yes.
We have same-day access. We have culturally competent care. We have holistic community support, like an air purifier in a closed room. And we have the legal compliance completely locked down. It all sounds great on paper. But as always, the proof is in the outcomes. Does this model actually work in practice?
The numbers in our briefing document are highly definitive.
They really are. I was looking through these stats, and the number that absolutely stopped me in my tracks was the attendance.
Yeah, that's a big one.
We are looking at an 89% improved attendance rate among the students utilizing the service. 89%.
Which makes total sense when you look at the other metric right next to it, which is a 92% reduction in anxiety.
Wow. So what does this all mean? To me, looking at that 89% improved attendance, it means we're not just solving a healthcare problem anymore. We're solving an education problem.
Absolutely.
Chronic absenteeism is one of the biggest crises facing schools across the country right now. If a kid isn't in the building, they aren't learning. Period.
You cannot educate an empty desk.
Right.
When you synthesize these numbers, the causal chain becomes very clear. Why do students miss school?
Usually because something is wrong.
Exactly. Very often, it is not because they don't want to learn. It is due to unmanaged anxiety, clinical depression, or a severe crisis at home.
Right.
School avoidance is a deeply psychological mechanism. When you reduce that underlying anxiety by 92%,
which is incredible,
by offering same-day, culturally competent care that actually understands the student, and by removing the hidden logistical costs so the parents can actually allow them to access the care.
The natural byproduct?
The inevitable byproduct is that the student returns to class. They actually show up to school because the school is now a place of support rather than a place of overwhelming stress.
That is just phenomenal. And then there is the family satisfaction rate, which sits at an incredible 85%.
And again, look at the mechanisms behind that number. Why wouldn't a family be satisfied?
Right.
You have completely removed the administrative burden from their shoulders.
Right.
They aren't fighting with insurance companies. They aren't taking unpaid time off work to drive across town.
And they aren't staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning wondering how to pay for it.
Exactly. When you take that massive logistical and financial weight off a parent, it allows them to be more emotionally available for their child.
Yeah.
They are seeing their child stabilize without having to sacrifice their paycheck or their job security to make it happen.
It's life-changing.
For anyone wanting to see the mechanics of this system firsthand, the documentation lists their touch points. You can find them at mentalspaceschool.com, and their contact email is mentalspaceschool@regionaltherapy.com.
It really is a masterclass in aligning incentives. Let's wrap up the journey we've taken today.
Let's do it.
We started in that dark, stressful place of a parent realizing their kid needs help, but hitting the terrifying wall of cost.
Right.
We explored the immediate relief of finding out Medicaid covers the cost completely and that commercial insurance is verified upfront with zero hidden logistical fees because of the teletherapy model.
Yes.
From there, we looked at how the school district manages to make this sustainable by flipping the script.
The infrastructure flip.
Right, paying for the infrastructure and the pipeline while letting existing insurance capital pay for the actual clinical water flowing through it.
A great analogy.
We saw how holistic care treats the whole environment, not just the student in a vacuum. And finally, we saw the tangible, measurable results. Kids returning to class, their anxiety dropping dramatically, and the whole school ecosystem getting healthier.
And this is why this matters to you. Whether you are a parent trying to navigate these incredibly complex waters, an educator looking at empty desks in your classroom, or just someone interested in effective systemic problem solving.
Yeah.
The MentalSpace school model proves a vital thesis. Logistical barriers are just as critical to solve as clinical ones.
Wow, yes.
The best, most culturally competent therapy in the world is utterly useless if the patient cannot access it. By attacking the friction of delivery, you unlock the actual healing.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder.
What's that?
Well, if separating the cost of infrastructure from the cost of the actual service can completely revolutionize access to mental health care in Georgia schools,
Yeah.
what other broken systems in our society could be fixed by that exact same logic?
Oh, that's a great question.
Think about general health care or higher education or even public transit. What other massive societal problems could be solved almost overnight if we simply redesigned who pays for the infrastructure versus who pays for the service?
That's fascinating.
It's something to chew on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you. Keep looking for those hidden costs. And remember...
The best solutions often start by just removing the parking fee.
Exactly. Catch you next time.